Hi, welcome to another episode of A Couple of Things. We are still on the 365-day run, and today's episode is episode 53, and I'll be talking about a UX related thing. So keep listening if you're a beginner UX researcher and getting started in the field, or you're curious about this UX research thing. I've been a UX researcher for 7 years. And for the most part, I've been the first researcher or the only researcher on my journey. I've given so many talks, I've lost count, and worked on a countless number of products. Apparently, at the 2-year mark, I had already worked on 29 products and done 8 workshops. And I haven't counted since then. But anyway, based on my journey, I want to share a few things that can help you if you're in your beginning phases of research, of being a UX researcher, or you're curious about how to do a UX research project, what you need to put in place. And this is very simple, basic, beginner stuff. And I'm just going to run down the things. Number 1, plan before you start and always document your plan. Number 2, always, as much as possible, try to do a pilot, especially for complex projects. Number 3, keep in mind that participant recruitment is not as easy as it seems. I talked about that on my previous episode. And number 4, not all deliverables are relevant all the time. I'll give you some bonus tips after as well. You know I love bonus tips. So I've written about some of these things before, and I will link to the post in the show notes. So number 1, plan before you start and document your plan. No matter how much you do research, you always have to have a plan. And when I first started, I didn't really know much about research briefs and plans. Although I was coming from a research background, I studied psychology for my undergrad, and we did a lot of research, and you had to do plans and all. But I didn't really think about applying it to the UX field. I would usually have a big idea of what I wanted to do and why. And sometimes it would be like in emails or messages to people involved in the project, and that was it. But then it made following up difficult and complicated, and I didn't know who knew what and where what was. And so I started making plans. It helped me to define the project, think about the research questions, who to recruit, how, think about the methods, and also, most importantly, keeping all the relevant stakeholders aligned and informed so that people could give feedback about things that were off the things that didn't align with what they thought, or things that they thought differently about, and so that everyone had a particular source of truth for the project and why we were doing what we were doing. And that helped, especially when I became a freelancer, because then I was able to clearly define what exactly I was doing and not underprice myself. Number 2 is always doing a pilot. Sometimes we feel like we know exactly what is going to happen, we know what we're going to do, especially when you're doing usability testing. I highly recommend always doing a pilot, and also for surveys, because piloting your survey helps you know what questions are weird for people, what questions people have difficulty understanding. It's basically testing your plan. When you pilot, is basically testing your plan and testing all the things that you have put together for your studying. So yeah, pilots your studies, whether you're doing interviews, surveys, usability tests, all kinds of things, to help you know that you're asking the right questions in the right way, and help you catch your mistakes beforehand so that your sessions can go more smoothly. Typically, it's best to pilot with someone in your target group, but if you're dealing with a very difficult to find participants profile, then you can pilot with your colleagues or your friends. When you first start doing research, you think that participants recruitment is easy to find people to participate in your research. Especially for me, my first project was redesigning the website of the company that I worked at, and all the stakeholders were kind of internal, majority of them. Even for the community, I had very easy access to the community of people who the website was also for, the external community. And so I didn't think too much about participant recruitment until I started having to work on other kinds of projects. And there's this tendency that for us to think that everyone wants to participate in your research, especially when you're giving them some kind of incentive. But this is not always true, especially if you're not using a recruiting panel, which is quite expensive to find. So you have to really think about how you recruit your participants, where you find them, how you reach out to them, what you'll be giving to them if you're going to give them anything at all, and all these other things that come with the logistics of recruitment. And recruitment is one of the more difficult parts of the research planning and conducting experience. And it depends on the user group that you're trying to target, and what you require of them. So longer studies, you probably will have more difficulty recruiting people. For if you need people to come to you, you also have a little bit more difficulty with that. So these are some of the things you need to consider. And I talked in a previous episode about how to recruit, and I will put that in the show notes. And number 4, not all deliverables are relevant all the time. A lot of the time, as beginner researchers, sometimes you've been exposed to personas and customer journeys and user flows, and there's a tendency to want to keep doing those things over and over again as the deliverables or artifacts of your research project. And I think that the reason we do this as well is because research is not very visual, and we always try to look for ways to visualize the work that we're doing, because that makes people more interested and more engaged and all of that. But we have to realize that not every project requires you to create personas or user journeys or user flows. You need to think about the purpose of whatever artifact that you are creating, how exactly it will be used, and who the people that will be engaging with it are, and if that is the best way to present that information to them. And now for some rapid fire bonus tips. Always take notes. Even if you're recording, even if you have a tool that is recording the session and everything is fine, it is tempting to think that technology will take care of all your problems. I've had many experiences where I thought the session was recording and it wasn't, or it was recording but something happened with the system and then the recording didn't save, or in for example with like in-person field studies where we were recording with a recorder, the micro SD memory card, oh my god, I can't believe I forgot the word for memory card, the memory card got corrupted or something. Like, those kinds of things can happen. So always develop your note-taking skills, and always take notes. It helps you. First of all, I think for me, it helps me stay focused in the session, because as I'm taking notes, I have to be focused on what the person is saying, especially if my mind tends to wander sometimes. So taking notes helps me stay focused, and I highly recommend it for other people beyond the not over relying on technology. And number 2, prepare for everything that can go wrong going wrong. Prepare for what you do if people don't show up for the sessions. Prepare for what you do if your recording equipment is not working. Prepare for what you do if your remote recording tool has a server issue and does not record the session. Prepare for your prototype not working as planned. Prepare for if only 2 people show up for a focus group that was supposed to be 7 people. Prepare for all of those things. Think about, do you want to have a contingency plan for something that goes wrong? How would you work around the issue? Or would you just cancel it and move on? Think about those things. And the third extra tip is to embrace silences in your research sessions. Silence makes us very uncomfortable sometimes, and we want to jump in and feel the silence. But sometimes sit in the silence, let the participant think, let the participants reflect, let them take their time. Don't be in a hurry to speak, to prompt them or to prod them. Just stay quiet and avoid talking over the participant as much as you can. And these things come with practice. So you can do practice sessions with your friends. It doesn't have to be with like participants, so that you can get more comfortable with things like being silent and piloting and all of those things. So I hope these tips are very helpful to you. I will also link to the article that this is based off of in the show notes. And yeah, bye. A quick reminder that I am accepting questions for the podcast. If you have any questions that you'd like me to cover, any things that you'd like me to talk about, please fill the form. I'm going to put the question form in the show notes. So yeah, bye. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of A Couple of Things. If you enjoyed this episode or found any part of it insightful, don't forget to share with your friends on your social media, and be sure to leave a comment or a review if you can on your podcast listening app. Thank you.